Hello, beautiful people. This your girl, Dr. Briggs, and you are tuned in to Goddess Light TV. I'm so excited today. We are going to have an awesome discussion about the new Netflix series TV show, Self-Made, which is inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker. And I have with me today my amazing, beautiful co-host of Dirt Off Your Shoulder, Vida Starr, who will also chime in and give her thoughts about the movie, or I should say TV series. So, Vida Starr, and you do a lot of other stuff too, so give us some more.
Well, I've been a radio host and producer for about 10 years and teach trauma-informed care. So I train people understanding trauma, childhood trauma in particular, and how to work with children, including their own children. How to work, I train doctors, nurses, teachers, those kind of folks.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
And so we do need more people to actually, teach people about trauma, how to heal from that. So it's awesome that you're doing this.
Thank you. I mean, we all need to have more understanding about our brains and our bodies and how they work and how they respond to our experiences. So.
Absolutely. So definitely gonna have to have you on another show, because that trauma and healing, y'all, we really as a community need to be focused on that. And that's actually a lot what we talk about on our show, Dirt Off the Shoulder. Get the dirt off your shoulder about Black mental health and trauma. But bringing it back today, one of the biggest things that's happening even around this coronavirus situation, entrepreneurs are stepping up. And so when we have movies like Self-Made come out, it's really an opportunity that a lot of people, I know a lot of Black women especially, have talked about how this movie is supposed to be inspiring, it's supposed to be uplifting and motivating. And yeah, I don't know, because listen, I'll be honest, I'll say I watched it, and this is coming from somebody who I don't even know a lot about the life of Madam C.J. Walker. I know a little bit. But when I talk to like you and a couple of all of my colleagues, shout out to Dr. Afia, who also did a review.
Her reviews are great.
Yes.
Completely recommend.
Yeah, if you have not checked it out, you need to check out her review too, because there was some lot of inaccuracies. And, I get that this is Hollywood. This is, they wanted to do a movie inspired by her story, but for a lot of us who don't know her original story, it could be kind of confusing.
And even beyond just Black women, I mean, as Black people, we don't really know our history.
Right.
And a lot of what we do know is inaccurate. And a lot of what we do know, even if it's accurate, comes from a white supremacist perspective.
Right.
And is being taught for their purposes, right? So even learning about the civil rights movement in particular, you're being taught from a white perspective, you're being taught about, hey, these people were just peaceful and let us treat them like crap, and then that's how they got their rights. And that's the story that they teach us in school. That's not the story that we should be telling.
Right.
We worked really hard, we were fighting, we were this, and it was a movement that comprised of very many different components. And there were different perspectives around it, but we don't even talk about history in that way.
Exactly.
So for me, it's not even just like, oh, I want to be inspired to hear these Black women's stories. It's the fact that Black people, we don't know our history. Exactly. We haven't been taught our history.
Yes.
Yes. And there are people whose names we know, like Madam C.J. Walker, but whose stories we don't know.
Right.
Or Booker T. Washington, or W.B. Du Bois, or just another poster that gets put up during Black History Month when you're in school.
Right. And I think it's important just to even think about the fact that, especially the newer generation really doesn't, I know I worked in a lot of different schools as a school psychologist, and there's not a lot of teaching of Black history, where as before, I don't know about you, like growing up, we had like definite Black history programs, a lot of things that were, around that time it was like popular, but it seems like as the years progress, I don't hear a lot about Black history. And even some students who were like, who is Harriet Tubman? Who is this person? Who is that?
Yeah, that would be surprising to me. I haven't worked in schools in a long time. The last school I worked at, that was in a Black neighborhood, was in Watts, and they had that staff was pretty adamant about teaching Black history. They even celebrated Juneteenth, and don't nobody in LA celebrate Juneteenth.
Listen,
that is
I do. My family is all from Beaumont, Texas, so
Texans celebrate.
We celebrate Juneteenth for sure.
Texans do, but living in LA, we don't have Black people in general. It's not like a big thing. It's like very specific organizations will might have a little something,
right?
But it's not a thing. I didn't even know what Juneteenth was,
right?
Growing up, nobody celebrated it. So this particular school, I saw them do that, but for the most part, I wouldn't know if the kids aren't learning that now. I do know a lot of schools in LA aren't majority black anymore too, so that I'm sure that has a huge
Thank you for bringing that point up.
A lot to do with it, with gentrification, and also white people moving out of LA. We're calling it the reverse migration, because they're moving out of the South. We can't afford to stay. So a lot of my experience in LA is probably different than what a lot of the black kids in LA are experiencing now.
Right.
So as far as learning our history in schools, that wouldn't even surprise me that we're not learning it anymore.
Yeah, and I think when you said like LA in general is very culturally diverse, maybe like other bigger cities that exist in the US, very diverse. So you'll see all different cultures. But I did work in different schools where it was not a lot of black students. But my issue with that is, first of all, you got a black psychologist at the school. You have certain black teachers, but even if you don't, black history is a part of American history.
Right.
So the fact that it's not being taught because, we don't have the black kids here, or not enough black faculty, or not enough black people in the community, makes absolutely no sense to me. And
it doesn't make sense, but it does make sense. I'm not saying it's right.
Right.
I'm saying it makes sense because if we're not there to say anything, then who are they going to listen to? Right.
Yeah.
If the staff there aren't black, if the students there aren't black majority, who's going to say anything? And the reality is this, in LA, a lot of the schools are probably predominantly Latino in South LA in particular, some of these schools that were once majority black. But if we were actually teaching accurate history, we would know that our histories are much more linked than we've been conditioned to believe.
Exactly.
Like the fact that there's a street called Pico Boulevard and we don't know who Pio Pico is. But go Google a picture of Pio Pico right now.
Girl, tell me who Pio Pico is.
Ooh, he was the governor of what was once called Alta California. All of this was Mexico where we're at, and it was also Alta California.
That is true.
He was the governor of Alta California. So we have a street called Pio Pico named after him. But if you Google his pictures, tell me what he looked like.
What did he look like?
He was an Afro-Mexicano.
Yes, Afro-Latina, and I feel that Afro-Latina.
And you have never been taught that there was a strong African cultural ancestry and history connected between blacks and the mestizo culture of Mexico, right? You're not even taught that. You're not taught about the Costa paintings and the Moorish Empire and the fact that there were two groups of black people in what they call Latin America today. There were Los Moros and there were Los Negros. Google Costa paintings. If you don't believe me, you'll see Los Moros were at the top of that caste system.
And Los Negros.
Los Moros were the Moors. You heard the term Moreno? Or Morena?
Yes.
So
black and brown people.
Those were the Moors.
Yes.
And so if you Google and you look further into that caste, and there's also something called Los Negros. They weren't the Moors. So I'm saying that our cultures are much more mixed and more linked than people want to realize. Remember, the Moors ran Spain, Italy, Sicily, Portugal. There's a documentary called When the Moors Ruled Europe. BBC did it. Now it's BBC, so it's more white perspective.
Yeah.
But you'll get a lot of little nuggets of information that you can do further research on. But my whole point is that, getting back to what you were saying, you should be learning black history anyway. But I'm saying Latinos should be learning black history, learning that they're a part of that history, and that we're a part of their history.
Felt
and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we're not different cultures, not different experiences. Of course, I'm not stupid. But there's a lot more to why we don't know who we really are. That goes, and this goes directly to my point about the movie. It's not an accident that we don't know our history and we don't know who we are. We keep talking about going back to Africa. We don't know nothing about here, and that wasn't that long ago. The story started in that show in 1908.
Right.
That's not that long ago.
Right. And I want to say that the dates. I know that.
Oh, the dates and the timelines, all that was all mixed up. I'm
sorry to burst your bubble, people, but yes, the dates that were coordinated in these. So there's the other thing. I understand that this is, again, fictional Hollywood, but we have to understand that when we were feeding this, we're visual learners, first of all. And so how we receive information is usually visually through TV and everything else. And if people don't have this background knowledge, you're just ingesting and believing everything. And these dates and real life American history, when they're quoting things, didn't even happen. That's what I didn't understand. I'm like, y'all talking about when NAACP and all these people who was involved.
Exactly. And the thing is, these things are easily researchable and these are on record.
Right.
In fact, some of these are on record in the actual book that this series was allegedly based on, even though there were all these infactual things taking place in the story that we saw.
Yeah, let's get that.
Yeah, you want to get to that?
Yeah, because, we can go all day. This is why I love her, first of all. She is like a walking history, especially Black history book, and I love her for that.
I just love actually studying it and researching it and looking into it. It's something that I just honestly, I'm gonna be real, be 100% real. Can I get real?
Get real.
I just smoke a lot of weed and I like to research. So when I get high, it makes me zone in, and I just get super excited. And it's like some people they like to get high and look at cat videos and go down the YouTube rabbit hole. You guys remember those days when you just sit on YouTube watching cat videos all day? Well, I use that, and that's because I get high and I start asking myself questions. I look at random things like the history of ketchup or something, but in that I get really excited about history. So I started getting really excited about Black economic history in particular. So that's why I was actually really excited about starting the series.
I was too.
I was actually.
She's my person. She's, you know, I remember in grad school, and that's why I said in graduate school, I had to write about, I have a specialization in gifted ed. And I remember them saying we had to write about somebody that we could be in history that could be identified as gifted that we could relate to. And so my thing is, I want to think about gifted Black people. What gifted Black people that I, in history, that made in today's day should have been identified?
You know, and for me, I want to, just like that, I like to draw inspiration from that. Because I think about, well, with all the freedom that I have now, the tools that I have now, the access that I have now, what is it that I can do with what I have now that I'm not doing versus what somebody did at a time they didn't have none of the stuff that I had?
Listen.
Right?
And then I look at myself like, girl, shut up.
Right.
Shut up. Your ancestors did it without this. What is you talking about?
Walker was the first in her family's generation to be born free.
Right.
So imagine the kind of trauma you had to go through. You have parents who've been traumatized, whose grandparents have been traumatized, whose great-great-grandparents have been traumatized. You know what I mean? Remember, this shit lasted for 300 years.
Yes.
And we're not even including another 100 years of lynching after that, right? So we're just talking about just the slavery portion. It's about 300 years, give or take, depending on when you call legally and all that stuff, right? Right. You have parents who've known nothing but slavery, nothing but bondage, who are raising you. And we know about how tough it is raising children today, the traumas that we've inherited today. Right. So just imagine then. And here's this little girl who has all her experiences, does end up in an unhealthy relationship, and does have all these tragedies happen to her. And at the end of the day, build something so great. Become inspired to build something great. You know, that's where, for me, it's just like, yo, I'm excited. I want to get into this. Let's make it happen.
Yes. And I really, I think you really just hit it on the nail about just understanding where you come from, understanding what our ancestors, our great grandparents, what they've been through, and how far we've come, and having that opportunity. So she's also an open thinker, and I can imagine that was hard as hell at that time.
There we go.
Hard as hell at that time.
It's hard now, so imagine how it was then.
Exactly. So even, okay, so if we think about the episodes, the first episode is just kind of her, like you said, you talked about her experiences. She had some trauma. Her hair is falling out. How many women can relate to that? Which
was actually very common at that time. Right. Because Black women especially, were using these products that were damaging to our hair. And remember...
Sounds like 2020. Okay.
Yeah. And also remember, during this time, a lot of Black women are leaving the South and going to other areas, right? Leaving the Deep South, going to the Midwest, the West, and the North, and all this. This is like late 1800s, early 1900s, right? So everybody's leaving the South. So when you're leaving, you're trying you're not picking cotton no more. You're not working on a farm no more. You might not even be a washerwoman no more. But you can't get hired unless you have a certain look. Because remember, there were already Black people who were in the North who had been established, and building businesses. So and they had already kind of assimilated. And this is why I put in the context what Booker T. Washington's issue was too. Booker T. wanted Black people to stay in the South and build in the South and basically be separate. And and his issue, which also I had an issue with how they didn't really highlight it as much. His issue with Master J. Walker and even the whole hair industry was that he felt like it was still more assimilation into whiteness.
But he didn't really understand it, because I'm thinking, at least based on the movie, they kind of portrayed her as saying, like, I want people to look like me. So even with her putting her face on the products, even her having dark-skinned Black models with hair that most of the women had. So I was confused a little bit about...
Remember because they were still straightening hair.
Y'all right.
And there were still products that people were putting on their skin to try to make them look a lot fairer, right? So,
but she wasn't selling that.
She wasn't necessarily, but that was his vision of the industry.
Oh, okay.
Remember, because she wasn't the only person. And she even highlighted the fact that she didn't do certain things that other people were doing,
right?
Because they were doing it in the industry. So his issue was with sort of industry in the first place,
beauty products,
right? Because beauty was still. And remember, even in this story, that was shown in the series, she's even saying that's what the beauty image is. Remember when her husband, allegedly coming up with these marketing ideas, and they're still centered on.
Oh yeah, right. That was. Look, if we gonna be all over the place, y'all, but that's okay. Y'all follow through. If you've seen the series, if you've seen the TV series,
and there will be spoiler alerts. I'm just letting you know.
Oh, we didn't already getting spoiled.
We didn't. But don't worry, it's not gonna take away from. We have more to say. Trust me.
Right. I think that was in episode 2 about that when they show.
I mean, the whole thing about her not even representing Addie's products. I mean, there's a constant. There's this constant theme on
skin
beauty.
tone.
Well, skin tone, but this what the beauty industry standards were, and what that look. But everybody's trying to look white,
right?
Or trying to assimilate into that. Right. So when you have these women who are leaving the South, going to the North, where there are all these established Black people, and they're trying to fit into this image. Well, if you want to work these kind of jobs, you want to be maybe a hotel hostess or something, or restaurant hostess. You have to have a certain look. Your hair had to look. You can't look like you was in the South.
So now that I'm thinking about it, I don't even like how this is sounding. Well, because I get where at that time, but I think if a free thinker of why do we have to look a certain way? Why can't we just embrace who we are?
But see, this is why it's important that when we look at history, we have a very real understanding of what was taking place. These things are never black and white.
Yeah.
And I think that was my issue also. It's like, well, Booker T. Washington was on the wrong side because they dissed him a few times.
Yeah, they called him a huckleberry.
Yeah, they
or something like that.
Him being a sellout and all these things. But there was no context given to the time and the conversations that were taking place.
I thought that was very unfair.
I thought so too. And in most situations, you'll find that if you look honestly at both sides probably have an underlying point that makes sense.
And it highlights W.E. Du Bois was supposed to be like this great person compared to Booker T. And I was like, is there like some type
Which is interesting because Madam C.J. Walker and Booker T. Washington eventually had a sort of supportive relationship.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really clear on that as well.
Yeah, in real history, they got along.
Yeah.
And so it was bizarre that they put that in there like a conflict.
I mean, and like most friendships and relationships and things in these sort of nature, sometimes they were agreed and sometimes they didn't.
Right.
But there was a certain level of respect they clearly have for each other. And that other thing I didn't really care for was this perspective of constantly push Booker T. Washington as this overt sexist. Yeah, that was another thing that I saw in the series.
I was like unsure because again, I don't know the story about Booker T.
He definitely, I would say, by if we look at today's standards and how we look at the role of women in our roles in family, our roles in the households, a lot has changed, right? It was the expectation that women knew how to run the household. So he did have certain beliefs around women should also know how to cook and clean and take care of the home. But he was talking about, at least from my opinion, because I'm sure there are scholars who are out there going to be like, no, she's wrong. Okay, but from how I read it, it sounded more to me that it was, we need to make sure that we understand our roles and our duties in order to build our communities. Yeah. And this is not an unusual type of thinking at that time of how, basically we need to build some sort of structure. And at the same time, he was a big believer that women should be educated. Yeah. His wives were educated. Right. These weren't stupid women. Right. And they were also speakers and educators and ran colleges. Right. 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 So we know that he clearly wasn't just go stay in the house and cook and clean and do nothing else. But then
his wife also said that she had her place where she didn't.
She said that in the series. Yeah. Is that what she really said? That's
what I was thinking. I was like, I don't know how accurate that part is. And let's just think about just these whole relationships that were going on in the whole the series.
There's so much we can get into Black relationships. There's so much we can get into because I feel I have a really big problem with this ultimate portrayal that Black men and Black women cannot be healthy together and be in healthy relationships together. Right. I didn't like, and the one guy that I thought was the good guy, that they clearly made the good guy. Notice how
you talking about Ransom?
Ransom. Notice how they made him such a soft-spoken guy. Yeah. His wife would even talk to him. I thought it was a little extra. Yeah. I was like, he just had this traumatic situation. This is tough. I'm sure it's hard for him to talk to his, supervisor, his boss about the fact that I just, messed up in this way. Right. And Black women are just, she's just like, you better tell her, you need to tell her, and looking at, I just kind of felt like it just made it, to me, even in the one guy that was supposed to be the good guy, I didn't like how they made him look so soft and weak, and and I didn't like that at all. And then all the other men were either stupid or sexist or egotistical, abusive, cheaters.
I just was like, why are
criminals?
We giving...
Sellouts, hated women, or had some, I just had a, and then talking about that also, which I had an issue with that. The other thing I had an issue with was this constant portrayal of light-skinned women as being these evil people, as though in Black families we haven't had light-skinned men and women and boys and girls since existence.
Exactly.
How many of us will fight for our light-skinned cousin right now?
Right.
You know what I mean? So and to always portray them as like this evil, snotty, stuck-up, snooty, hates dark skin. That has not always been our only interaction within Black women's spaces, and that bothered me a lot.
Yeah, it was terrible to have those highlights, and I think I know Dr. Fia had talked about the fact that, first of all, the storyline about her husbands, I believe Madam C.J. Walker had actually lost her husbands to they were killed. She had 3 or 4 husbands?
I'm not even sure. I want to say she had 3, but
he's the third. I think CJ was the third, and I believe
they were only together for a year.
But she had already established her business before she even got with CJ. Let's just be honest. I just want to say that.
I don't know.
Because when she moved, I want to say, and I don't know. I read this book called Black Fortunes, and in that book, who's that by?
Shamari Wills. I really love that book.
Black Fortunes.
In that book, he talks about how she actually was with CJ when she was working for Annie Malone, not Addie Monroe. Fuck whoever. Oh, can I cuss in there?
We try to not have the cuss.
My bad. I'm a cusser. But Addie Monroe was a fictional character that they completely made up, did not exist. Mm-hmm. They created that entire storyline, and which to me is stupid and unusual. And I'll get into my theory into why I think they did that, but a little bit later. But I felt like her story.
We're at 22 minutes. Jeez. Sorry.
But I feel like her story, Madam J. Walker's origin story, was completely just messed up.
Yeah.
I do believe CJ actually inspired her to leave Annie Malone. Mm-hmm. That's what I got from the book Black Fortunes. Okay. He was saying, hey, you should be supporting her and wanting to do this on her own.
I feel like he was a supportive husband. I think they portrayed him as being very jealous or just not supportive, and then her being this woman who was just trying to control and run over him. And
again, another messed up perspective of Black couples. We don't even know if that's the accurate. Now, did he cheat on her? Yes, but they were only together a year. He was not as significant, huge part of her business or life as
they tried to make it.
Right. I think because she carried his name the way she did, because it made her feel more regal, and I understood that too. That was really important to her. I had a big problem with creating such an overly simplistic storyline without the nuances that are really underneath. It was just too oversimplified.
Right.
Does it happen where people become resentful if someone's more successful than they are in relationships? Yes, that happens. Was he driven to cheat on her because she drove him away by focusing on
that's
business?
The underlying thing that I think that was probably untrue.
People cheat with or without that.
Exactly.
Some people don't cheat with or without that. Right.
Yeah. So I almost felt like it was telling me, if you're going to be out there trying to live your dream, successful, if you make more money than him, if you're doing all these things, you're likely going to drive your man away.
And you're likely at a cost.
At a cost. And what is more important to you, Black woman? Is it your man, your family, or is it your dreams and aspirations? It was almost making her choose. Which I'm anytime something happens in your life where you have to choose between your goals and dreams and the love of your life, that probably ain't the love of your life.
Right.
Because everything should be aligned and everything should come together. So I don't know if that was really accurate in how they broke up, but it just, that message was like, come on, y'all.
Right. And the thing is, if you're just choosing storylines, why you choose that one? If you just pick,
if we gonna be Hollywood, why we gotta be so Hollywood to where it's that?
But why are you even doing? To me, I want to see new stories, new storylines, new nuances. Maybe look at this in a different way. Maybe consider things that maybe I didn't consider in relationships. Right. Maybe consider things that we may not consider in histories and traumas and things like that. You know,
right?
I want to feel that. I want to make me look at things, make me look at something in a new way that I not like you got all your storylines from Twitter conversations. That's how I felt with this show. Like they went on Twitter and they said, oh, there's always light skin, dark skin beef. Let's make sure there's some of that in there. Oh, there's this whole new thing where black women are crapping on black men all day. Let's throw that in there. It's black women power, and then pretend like it's black women empowerment. I'm gonna say this. And this is no diss to my black feminist sisters and nothing like that. But this is the real. I'm gonna tell you some real stuff right now. Ain't no freedom for black women if it ain't no freedom for black men. Ain't no freedom for black women if it ain't no freedom for black men. Ain't no freedom for black women, for black children, nobody if there's no freedom for black men.
Absolutely.
So we gotta kill whatever this new shit is. Oh, sorry, I cussed.
Okay. That's all right.
But we gotta kill whatever this new thing is that I'm seeing on social media that I don't even think is real in real life.
No. Because and here's the thing, I've been so fortunate that I've met so many good black men and that have been supportive.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think I've had more black men, and these are not black men and like, oh, they trying to get at you. No, these are my brothers, okay? Yeah. These are people who see something and they're like, listen, sis, I got you. I want to help you. I want to support you.
Right.
And whatever other women, I've seen it happen.
Right.
When I said we
since I've met you,
yes.
I've met black men that have been supportive, that have been supporting our work,
right?
And not just and totally respectful, and not just like, oh, you guys are nice people, you guys are girls, let me get you. No, it's like, oh, we think you're talented. Can you be a part of this?
Right.
You know, this will help your brand.
Shout out to Trey.
Shout out to Trey.
It starts with friends. Yes.
Gotta shout them out. So yeah, I think I've been very blessed in that way. I know it's such a weird thing for an atheist to say.
Yeah.
But I always say the word blessed.
Oh, and Black Jagger, I gotta shout him out too. There's just so many people.
There are people who are so I've been lucky in that I've had a lot of black men in my life that have been supportive, even when there were black men in my life that have been abusive. You know? So I just never liked that image in that story, or that being pushed, that we're always in this disruption and we're never getting along, that we're always fighting. There are black men that will die for the black women in their lives.
Amen.
Right now. There are black men that are breaking their back right now, coronavirus and all, putting their lives on the line right now for their families.
Exactly.
And it's not just black women doing it. Black men are doing it too. And we got to acknowledge that. And I feel like when I watch series like these, it's supposed to be from us and by our people, we should be highlighting that too. That doesn't mean that there's no tensions that also exist.
Right.
Of course, we know the traumas. We know that things affect relationship. But then let's talk about that too then. That wasn't in there.
We got to have a part 2.
We didn't talk about how, her drive coming from the fact that, hey, my parents were slaves. But guess what else comes from being raised by parents that were slaves? I'm sure a lot of trauma that makes it difficult to feel safe and healthy in a relationship. That wasn't in the series. That series was only 5 episodes. We could have made that a real series of a whole season and really told some stories and given us a real good context of the history of that time period. And we missed that opportunity with
it wasn't, and we gotta go because we gonna do part 2 of this because
this is so good.
I really want us to tap into the family dynamics and the relationships that they had, because I know we talked in a little bit about it, but it's really important to acknowledge that they had these like flashbacks. But if for people that's not really clear on what was going on, why she was having those flashbacks, what that represented, it goes deeper, because we can even talk about how that impacts us today in the script that we play in our head. It was a script that was going in her head, if you think about it, all the different flashbacks, even about just her appearance, even about her drive and what she could do.
But I also had an issue with them making her look so weak. Because she was very like, no, I'm proud of how I look. I'm gonna put me on the cover of my product.
Right.
Right. They feel like they made her feel like, so she didn't have this inferiority complex around light skin. Like, where did that even come from?
Yeah, I don't know. Was Annie Malone?
Annie Malone was light. People try to say I read an article to say she was dark. She wasn't dark. She was light.
Okay.
But she hired all types of women.
Right.
She had like 100,000 people working for her.
Right. And her and Annie Malone, we had to talk. That's not.
That's a whole other thing. Annie Malone, not Addie Monroe again, was a fake character. Annie Malone, who actually gave Madam T.J. Walker her start, was actually more successful than Madam T.J. Walker. Madam T.J. Walker was only like a third of what Annie Malone was in the Poro Company.
Yeah, the Poro Company.
Yeah.
And also, was that beef that Annie Malone.
So they did have a beef because they had a falling out because when Madam T.J. Walker went to strike out on her own, Annie felt like she copied her products and used her chemicals. So that did happen. Mm-hmm. They did have a fall. Now, whether or not that was true, I don't know if that actually got found out. But the fact that somebody was basically a protege and they just go off on their own, that I can see that just hurting. If anything, even if it was done legitimately, I can still see that causing a fallout. So that doesn't really surprise me. But they were very much business competitors and business rivals. And I felt like the storyline in the show was much more focused on the light skin, dark skin thing. Yeah, than the actual business part. I wanted to get inspired of how did they do this business, because if they was doing it in the early 1900s, yes, I'm like, sis, teach me. So that's another part. That's the other thing. This was an opportunity to give us some real insight into segregation. Not what we've been conditioned to believe through our white supremacist education around segregation and desegregation. We've only learned about it one way. There were two sides to that desegregation debate. And a lot of these spaces weren't desegregated. These were segregated spaces. Right. So there are segregated communities Black people are living in, and they're building their own companies. That's how you got the things like Tulsa, Oklahoma, a Greenwood community of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Black Wall Street. Eatonville, Florida. Durham, North Carolina, Rosewood, Knoxville. I mean, I can go down the line, right? Right. Because you have these black businesses that are also coming up around this time. Right. It's actually, I think, called the golden. I think it's like the golden era of Black business, golden age of Black business. Yeah. There's there's a Black. I don't know what her actual title is, but she's a professor, a Black, I would say, historical economist, and she talks about Black economic history. She has a book on the business of Black economics. Juliet E.K. Walker. Juliet E.K. Walker, a Black woman. Yeah. So check out her stuff too, because that's my whole point. That what was happening at that time, we could have got a much bigger picture. So recruiting these washerwomen and these women who never had opportunities before to become sales agents and dress nice, and it wasn't just about being beautiful. They made these women sales agents. It wasn't just those 5 and however they made it look. These women were like, they got to look good, they got to sell products, bring in money for their families, and support their communities and invest in these Black communities. They're able to buy things now from Black-owned stores. Yes, and we always think about, that's a whole nother talk we'll probably tap into, especially in part 2, about, when we integrate it. We might need it, girl. This is some girl. We should have pulled up some tea right now and had snacks and all. You said show. I know. I was like, let's get it. We could have just did this live.
Yeah. You know what? Matter of fact, the next one is live. The next one, y'all, we're gonna have part 2.
I will be wearing a Black T-shirt, so just know that I'm a Black T-shirt fanatic.
That's okay.
I'm just letting them know it's a different Black T-shirt, but it'll be a Black T-shirt.
I don't know what I'm wearing. I'm probably wearing something Black, maybe. Who knows? But y'all, this is some juicy stuff, okay? Because I really, really, and I'm so happy you came, because, a lot of people, let me just want to put out there, nobody was ill or anything the last 2 weeks and had no symptoms of anything. Nope. We've been doing our steam.
Vitamin C, yes, echinacea, ginger, all the immune boosting.
Was it Edelberry?
Edelberry.
Yeah. And then
Elderberry. One of them.
Yeah. Elderberry. Yes.
I have an elderberry hibiscus tea. So not only am I boosting my immune system, I'm helping to cleanse my kidney.
That part. Get them key limes, y'all. Alkaline your body. But I just want to say that it's just been a blessing to have her come, and I knew you was gonna give me the stuff. I knew it. So we're going to have a live, and we're going to tap in, and that way you guys can interact and give us some questions and thoughts. Stay tuned. Again, I want to wish y'all love, light, and peace, but I also want to inspire y'all to do your research, okay? Don't let people tell you what it is, your truth and your history. Do y'all research, okay? Because like I said, even as a person who loves Black history and all the things, I got caught up in just watching, and then when I realized my friends, my colleagues hit me up like, girl, there's some tea. That ain't the whole truth. And I'm like, well, I know it's just a Hollywood inspired, but I said, but then I thought about it like, but everybody don't know that. Everybody don't know that, and that's the problem. If everybody thought like that, like, oh, I could just take it as a fictional thing. Nah, we digesting that as the real. And so we want to make sure that our people understand the truth and also be inspired by how much I'm inspired just listening to all the stuff. Okay, so I can't wait until we even tap into Annie Malone, because she sounds like a beast.
Oh, that's my girl.
And
that is my girl. And
we just talk about just Black business in general. Okay. So how can they follow you as well?
Follow me on Instagram. I am Vida Starr, VIDASTARR. I'm also on Facebook, same name. And looking forward to reach out, say hi. I like to talk to people. I'm a talker.
Yes. That's awesome. And then you guys know me, Dr. Briggs. You can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Glam3. That's DRGLAM3.
She is always glam.
I try to put a little jab.
I've never seen her not fly.
Listen, I tell we all a reflection of each other. So thank you, Queen.
Oh, that's so sweet.
All right, y'all. Stay tuned. We are out.